Then Paddy Boyle comes on the way for a taste of a chat with the neighbours. And if you ask...
There is in a place called Ballynahown on the slopes of Cunnacanore, about 5 miles from the store, a man called Michael Barry. Michael Barry has a whole carriage of the Lartigue Railway intact. He has several hundred feet of line, and anybody who wishes to pay a visit to Michael Barry is welcome. There is no charge, and Michael is the soul of hospitality and generosity, and we owe him a lot for preserving this relic of the past. So take a lot, you know.
I had been interested since I was a young lad, but I didn't think about doing anything about it because I thought it was impossible to do anything about it until about 20 years ago. And then I see bits and pieces of it here and there along the line.
Whereabouts would you see the bits and pieces?
Mostly around the Lizzelton area, which would be halfway between Listowel and Ballybunnon.
And what kind of bits and pieces now are you talking
mostly
about?
Top rail. The top rail was used for various purposes, holding up turf sheds, and making little passages and bridges across small, narrow streams.
First appeared on the scene.
The reason he arrived in Ballybunnon is that there was proposals to build a railway line in great demand from the people in Ballybunnon to bring their children into St. Michael's College in Listowel, and the farmers were anxious to get sand from the sandhill for building and for the farms, etc. like that. So there was different proposals in regard to a rail line, but Lartigue latched into this and saw the idea of that Ballybunnon was an ideal spot to run his elevated rail line to.
He was either side of this one rail.
It went on either side, like over the rail. Needless to say, everything had to be duplicated. Tickets there which show actually that there were tickets printed from the main stations, from Tuam and Ballina, etc. like that. So Ballybunnon was a very popular place at that particular time.
Patrick Maloney, the only surviving driver of the Lartigue engine, remembers how easily the engine handled.
It's harder to drive a car than the engine. Much harder to drive a car. The engine was very easy to drive. All you had to watch is the road, that's all.
And what about the balance between the carriage on one side and on either side of the rail?
That was the worst part of it, the balance. If she didn't balance up, you'd button the wheels off at one side, because all the weight would come on one side and the wheels get buttoned off.
And was that your job? Was it your job to balance the passengers?
My job to balance. If anything happened, I was responsible.
So how would you go about balancing if you had, say, 20 passengers? Would you go along and pick a fat fella and say...
It with my leg. I'd open the door and put my leg up in it and I'd shake it with my hand, and I'd find out how she balance. You get used to it after a while. You could tell exactly. She had to balance, like.
Yeah. And how fast would it go?
Oh, could you fast about, I say, about another 10 miles an hour.
So your hair wouldn't exactly be blowing in the wind, would it?
In the engine, yes. Oh, yeah, you're up in the engine, you're...
Of railways let anyone speaking, of the Grand Trunk or Western Union.
Listowel Writers' Week to celebrate the centenary of the line. It's written by local enthusiast Michael Guerin. Michael.
And one model that we have here was built by Dinsey Collins of Ballydonohoe. Now this is a beautiful model where he has built the engine, some of the carriages, the mobile stairs. He has built the guard van, Lizzelton station, and that is a beautiful model.
Sure there isn't one like the Lartigue that runs into famed Ballybunion. It's built on a plan of its own.
I remember there was a queue along here of nearly 50 to 60 people in the morning I was going. And in that queue were boys and girls who were going for the first time. Tearful eyes. The parents were too lonely to come into the station to see them off. That was the biggest hemorrhage, I would say, that Ireland ever knew, with that huge exodus around that time. Then you had the old stagers, fellas who were used to coming and going, hopeless cases. And when I got on the train that day, I started to think of the whole situation, it's the tragedy underlying it, and I started that song, which I used later in the play, Many Young Men of 20, and I was beating at the window like this, you know. Many young men of 20 said goodbye all that long day. From break of dawn until the sun was high, many young men of 20 said goodbye.
Paddy Maloney was one of those young men who left Listowel in 1923 and worked in America for 63 years. He is now in retirement back home and at the age of 88 is the last surviving member of the Lartigue Railway staff.
The most on the line was to put all the trains together to go out with. Put all turn the engine around, turn the table and make up trains. Sometimes you make up maybe two or three carriages, sometimes 5 carriages. Then we'd have to put on sand wagons on to bring in sand. I'd have to do all that.
The Lartigue Centenary Committee worked at full steam to make the launching of the book in the town square a lively and colourful occasion. Staff from the Bank of Ireland donned the dress of their predecessors who were bankers for the Lartigue Railway Company. A local steam traction engine puffed plenty of atmosphere into the proceedings. The Listowel singers arrived also in full period dress to give the inaugural performance of the Lartigue Centenary Year song composed by Colm O'Brien.
Intrigue, think of the Orient and the West and the city, but the pride of them all is the famous Lartigue, Lartigue of Frenchmen.
The Lartigue Centenary Committee hoped to raise enough money from the book to restore Listowel Railway Station as a museum. They also have plans to build a full working steam model of the Lartigue for public display.
The film they dedicated family at the time. And then it comes into the stone, and you can see them coming out of the stone and where the police coming down the track. I got to finish up fairly rapidly now. The other thing that's on that is the last train out of the stone in 1977.
But wherever the truth is known, which leaves us to make out the answer, there's only one wheel on the line, and the track... Like my story is single, sure there isn't a railway so fine, not excepting the trolley and dingle. Oh, 'tis nice to jump into a car when Jack Reedy is driving the train, sir. But be careful you stop where you are, for maybe you'd fall out against her. Then Paddy Boyle comes on the way for a taste of a chat with the neighbours. And if you ask him how long she will stay, till the engine's done cutting queer capers, there's only one wheel on the line, and a track like my story is single. Sure there isn't a railway so fine, not excepting the trolley and dingle. The old train's held together with rope,